Disruptions in Parliament by members of Parliament are becoming the norm. Economic Freedom Fighters MPs disrupted President Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency budget presentation for 2 days. For more on this and other issues, I'm joined by One South Africa movement leader, Mmusi Maimane. Mr. Maimane, good afternoon. Thanks for speaking to us. To be chaotic or not to be seems to be the question. Your reaction to the last 2 days in Parliament?
Yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans. I think, first of all, we need to recognize the fact that Parliament has become dysfunctional, that the political system in there has failed to do the job of ensuring that things like state capture are protected, that, in fact, the appropriate appointments are processed through. And so, naturally, it then becomes, instead of doing the work of holding government to account, it becomes a space for political theater. And in my humble opinion, that when you reflect on the fact that what is now going on in Parliament, today, no South African could sit back at home and say they are a lot wiser about whether the president was allowed to have such amounts of cash or not, what the purpose of those things was for. We needed an ad hoc committee to ensure that the president can come and account there. None of those things are, in fact, taking place. So whilst at a fundamental core, we need to recognize that people play party politics inside Parliament instead of actually people accountability. And my reflection on the last couple of days are the fact that the theatrics only serve to solidify your own base, but they do not help in terms of building accountability and ensuring that actually the president, who faces a very serious matter, actually accounts for that matter.
Now let's talk about processes, and certainly the EFF. And they have argued that the president needs to account for the alleged $4 million United States dollars that were stolen on his farm. Now, that disruption takes away from the possibility of interrogating that, does it not?
Absolutely. And that's the point I'm really trying to make is what should have in fact happened is Parliament fails because, A, the speaker is political. It fails because actually the decisions of Parliament aren't always followed through, as the Concord judgment has been handed out the other day. And furthermore, it fails because it doesn't use its full powers, because the ANC exercises majoritarianism, which means that even when the facts presented to themselves, they vote in one way, which ends up being in court anyways. What in fact needed to happen, as I said, a simple motion needed to have been passed by members of Parliament to say, here's an incident. The president must come and explain to SARS and the Reserve Bank, who ultimately can be summoned to come to Parliament and give evidence on whether or not a sitting president is entitled to be holding on to millions of US dollars, whether those have been declared, whether in fact SARS have been informed and the appropriate taxes have been paid on it. That should have been the process, and then expertise can come in to be able to give whether the appropriate tax was paid or not. That's how it works. And if the president is found to have been unfit or has done something illegal, then Section 89 of the Constitution then is applicable, that gives powers as to what Parliament can and cannot do. But instead, we've been treated to theatrics. We now look forward to taking on, almost if you watch Parliament, you can just as well bring popcorn. And the consequence of it is that the president has managed to get away scot-free. And furthermore, his political party has been able to rally behind him because they scare embarrassment rather than, in fact, a job of accountability, which I think Parliament has failed at. And therefore, that's why we as citizens need to ask better of our parliamentarians. We need to reform the electoral system so that at least at some point people don't feel that their first loyalty is to their party, but in fact their first loyalty should be to the Constitution and the people of this country.
Mr. Maimane, is it fair to say that Parliament has failed, or the EFF has failed Parliament and has failed the citizens of this country? Because I'd like to imagine that if they had let processes run, then the possibility of putting in those applications to have the president come in and answer would have happened.
No, I think it's both. It's the full institution. I can recall many others would say what happened around President Zuma. It wasn't the theatrics that always brought the matter to public light. It was the fact that we had a sober public protector report. It was the fact that that was processed through an ad hoc committee. And furthermore, an appropriate vote had taken place as to whether the president should and what actions he should take. And then extra legal activity that took place after that. The same must ensue in this instance. Stop the theatrics. problem is if you've got a speaker whose sole job is to protect the party, then of course Parliament is not going to do its job. So even if the reason why sometimes the EFF has to ramp up the theatrics, as it were, is because actually the processes of Parliament, as it pertains to the ANC, aren't always followed, and they just simply use their numbers to say, we'll vote this way or that way. It would have been quite easy for the Speaker to say, recognizing that the President has a serious allegation, there's already a motion on the order paper, the House can adopt that resolution to say the President will come to an ad hoc committee to come and account. That would have been a simple thing for the Speaker to do in collaboration with the chief whips of the other parties. But instead, they wanted to go to a theatrical show where the citizens of this country are the biggest losers when it comes to this particular issue.
So you're saying that the Speaker, one, lacked impartiality, if you will, number one. And number two is, could she have conducted herself better, conducted that situation better?
The script is written. The movie is set. We all know what is going to happen. It almost, I could tell you, if the same incident was to reoccur next week, it will be points of order, it will be disruptions, then the security services in, and then MPs are kicked out. It feels like a repeat movie. Surely our democracy must mature to a level upon which we have preemptive actions, but that Parliament, that's why I think I'm sympathetic to the argument that says you need a speaker who, when appointed as speaker, given the proportion of the system as we have it, must actually resign, if you like, party membership or their constituency as it happens in other democracies, so that they can exercise the impartiality that's needed. At this point in time, post the era of Freddie Junwala and many others, and Mr. Sisulu, who was then the speaker, we really descended into speakers whose primary interest is to serve the party ahead of anything, and they are senior elected leaders within the ANC and the NEC. Therefore, when they come to Parliament, they just simply use it as a private, another body for the ANC, rather than actually a place where there's accountability for the executive. The President does not account anywhere else. Can't account to the Integrity Committee, can't account to some other structure. The only place where the executive accounts is at Parliament. And if Parliament cannot do its job, we need to look at how Parliament functions, reform the Electoral Act, and ultimately get people there whose interest is in guarding democracy rather than playing theatrics on all sides, all parties that are included in the matter.
Mmusi Maimane, very quickly, my final question is that criminal charges, which include assault, intimidation, have been opened by staff members against members of the EFF. The EFF, on the other hand, have sworn that they will not allow President Cyril Ramaphosa to speak in Parliament. What does Parliament look like, in your view, in the next sitting?
Yeah, well, therein lies a big challenge. All of these threats that you can't allow accountability not to take place, and then put yourself in the line of danger where people can get injured. I think that where the independence, the actions that have been taken, as difficult as they are, must ensure that parliamentary business goes ahead and the people must account. And furthermore, citizens must realize that if this is a model of arrangement, then they should go at the polls to ensure that they vote for parties whose interest is in the institution and democracy rather than the theatrics. The assault charges must be investigated, and if any person was hurt in the process, they must get arrested, because no citizen, no member of Parliament must ultimately be manhandled in the manner that some of those scenes were playing out. So again, I highlight that this is a crucial role for Parliament to reform, to work properly, and I would urge that an urgent sitting is put together between the executive of Parliament, and we find a bilateral point of view, because the people of this country don't have time for theatrics. They are hungry, they are unemployed, they are unsafe, and they need answers.
When I say movement leader, Mmusi Maimane, thank you for your time this afternoon.